Sheila here with Sirius Thales moon. Soul hour, soul day. Soul is 4 degrees Pisces, about to conjoin Formula out. Everything is 11th. So, everything is 11th. It's a eureka time. Um, uh, Granted, it's not explosion and suicide. Let's caretake for a video while we talk about the second episode about Bernoulli. Because this guy was my thesis. I can't even. Oh my god. Um, I caretake for a video on bitchute, and the recording stopped just when. No! Fuck that. Okay, whatever. Usually I say no, you know why I say no? Because usually it means that there would be worse. Worse revelation, unless it wouldn't need to be. Let's see. Or the best if the reasons for that episode now, second episode, Bernoulli, Spirit of Matter in Bernoulli, and my prediction was so fully borne out that I can't even begin, because what Bernoulli did was basically all that I said. Okay, the superposition principle is basically derived by his developments in statistics and probability, and also Bernoulli principle. The fact that he would, okay, because what is superposition? When is something in one state and when is something in another state? When we talk about the evaporation between water and water as water and water as air, we're basically talking about the nonlinear dynamic system. Bear with me. But photoelectric, forget about photoelectric patterns. At what point, when will we see the molecule of water as a gassy form, okay, from water to air? It's very interesting, as my father named me on my middle name, which was Hebrew, Tali, over the dews of that could be seen from the window, because it was early morning, and dew is basically a phenomena that relates exactly to this principle, which is when the water evaporates. So in the malleable state, one could even say dew is one form of superposition of water and air, not on a micro level but on a macro level, okay? Because right before the air dries the water, as the sun rises, we still have dew on the leaves of the plants, okay? The point of when the water becomes air, what would be the threshold? Now, because temperature changes, okay, that by water evaporating, and then it's a nonlinear dynamic system, and then basically when we cross a certain threshold, it begins to cool again because the air rises and begins to cool again. But when the clouds are forming, we have kind of like a um, warming effect. And then when the cloud dissolve, this is why in the winter people wait for there to be clouds and they wait for the rain. But when there's no clouds and no rain, it's colder. And then the upper threshold would be the clouds, which would basically be the opposite of evaporation, which is when the gas turns into water, and it warms up enough, it cools down enough to become gas, and it warms up enough to become rain, and then the rain breaks through the friction if it manages to break through the friction. If not, it is coming down as snow or the many other types of snow. Grew up next to the equator, so there are many other types of snow. We don't have 70 words for that or anything like that. I think I explained it somewhat correctly. So, um, but the chemical composition, which was Bernoulli equations, the chemical compositions would alter that temperature, and so the the chemical composition could be explaining some of the anomalies in those. It could eliminate some superposition uh, or some predict. Let's say if there's a system and I say, okay, this part is in superposition. Okay, this part could be, if I translate that from light to weather, it can. Okay, basically, if with light we ask, is it a light? Is it a particle? Is it a wave? Is it a particle? When we talk about changing from gas to water, from gas to liquid, or from liquid to solid, we're basically having those superposition states where something could be at that point gas and at that point water. Um, Engine speaking, it could be whether the plane explodes or not. Now, the chemical, for example, to make a plane explode, what could enter, what could insert? Why does it matter if we have the right form of, let's say, gas or petrol? Because the wrong one could be a different chemical composition that could cause anomalies in the operation of the engine. For example, a mind control plane technician could be injecting something that of chemical component that could that could explode an Air Force One. uh, yes, don't traffic children. Zero rape, zero slavery. I said what I said. Now, if we have superposition, which means for a certain system, there's a probability for something to be gas. It's on the threshold, and on the threshold, there's a probability for it to rain, probability for it to stay in gassy form. And it enters a chemical component and it changes the probability. Um, Um, for example, slow release cyclone B. In persistent dosages, we don't know what could be. And um, yeah. Anyway, so basically, Bernoulli's equations, if we actually take a moment to read them, we understand a lot. Because if something is changing in the chemical composition of the air, of course, the superposition states are basically changing. Because if I had to computate for some probability, then now something else affects it. And so, which of course affects, you know, floods, earthquakes, tsunamis, ice melting, um, and so on and so forth. Now, we talked about developments in probability and statistics, but definitely the those the fact that the principles of water and air, he developed things exactly what I said with the delineation. He did exactly what I predicted that he would do. Now, regarding medicine, he developed the principle for vaccines um, because he basically predicted that we can inject something chemical into a body, and it can be a virus, and it can be intervening in the intervals of that virus. I mean, Wikipedia can't say it, but Feynman did when he said he was sitting with the best scientists. That would come up with um, cures to ailments that people thought are incurable, and at the same table would be sitting maybe an hour later scientists that, academia cafeteria, but Caltech, and in the same period would be um, scientists that would computate how to create the elements that nobody can cure. Bernoulli created the foundations. And back then it was used with, viral infections like smallpox. I think it was smallpox. That is injection of a chemical component that changes whether a virus is going to spread or not. It's kind of like seeding clouds, um, but but in chronic ailments. It's kind of like regulating an ailment to be activated within the body through injection and regulated with injection. Um, that's probably what he actually did. But we were told that he was laying the foundations for developing vaccines um, that would inject a small amount of the virus so that they would trigger the immune system. Again, this works on the threshold principle, and um, And this is what makes vaccines so believable, because the principles, the foundation, the scientific foundation is not basisless, um, and yet we have to take into account that those clouds were seeded in. It's kind of like, hey, if somebody is going there purposefully spreading viruses, definitely having an antidote would be of use. Um, but then there are other issues with that. Um, Definitely, if somebody was poisoned, then having the antidote to the poison is helpful, and and the fact that that antidote may contain things um, is something that is as old as at least as old as Bernoulli. Um, so definitely he connected the air and water dynamics. Definitely he laid a foundation for um, superposition states, and it's basically nonlinear dynamic systems that he looked at, which would be foundations for Chaos theory that developed in the 60s and the 70s. Of course, very easy to understand Bernoulli after we have somewhat looked into quantum chaos. Not that I know how to develop an equation in quantum chaos, but I have corrected one using a theory because I understood the theory. It was a moment in my life. The writer of that equation was later required to rape a child to cameras, and then he was exposed before he could further prevent um, scientific stagnation by doing actual science. And he was a mathematician. Um, and usually, to get a person to rape a child would require him being raped, um, and that being and mind control to be activated, either by ritual circumstances or peer pressure of some secret society or community. And yeah, I definitely have looked at this equation when Saturn was right where Pluto is now. Either Saturn or Jupiter or both. Um, and this was the lockdowns, and then I would be targeted again. Um, Pluto is about standing in our power, so where I had to deal with the implication of my understanding. I cannot even say scientific discovery, because it's just that if I was learning some basis, then I was making the conclusions or the derivative, the induction and deduction to other phenomena. And like I said, it's not much scientific discovery by me here, simply common sense with what has already been discovered in as far as the 1700s, together with the 70s and the 80s, um, and, 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 and applying that to mundane situations. So just the fact that I understood that was enough. Um, and this is a bringing together the astrology, the science, art with the stars, and I'm going to tentatively consider this phase 3 of my launching. Bernoulli. So this man has been so significant in my life. Um, Man or woman, I mean, or hermaphrodite, been so significant in my life, and I didn't even know that until today. And I'm dedicating, and when I say dedicating, of course, creating, let's say, vaccines might have not been the best implementation, but we don't have to leave it at there because I've already addressed the issues around. And by the fact of addressing the things that I've previously addressed, I'm ushering phase 3, which is curating and actually making place for art to art and science to science, and people to not have to be raped and rapey to participate in life with all its art, science, and um, life. Medicine is life. The curation for things is to live. Um, so this is phase 3. And by the way, I will only see the chart of the launching after um, so yes, this was Spirit of Matter style. Um, and and basically this is the first episode where I didn't know that this is the launch yet. Yeah. And well, no. So